10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You have entered Untold Radio AM. And now broadcasting from a secret location, your hosts, Joel Sturgis and Doug Hajicek. Hey everybody, it's Joel Sturgis over here, Doug Hajicek over there. Hey look, it's Alex Hajicek right over there. You're listening to or watching Untold Radio AM. And we really want to thank you guys for stopping in again and bringing us into your lives and hanging up in the next 2 hours with Doug and I and Alex as we discuss all things strange, wonderful, and just a whole lot of fun. Right, guys?
Yeah.
Right.
So why am I the big guy? Why am I huge?
I don't know why you are. I've been asked that before. And I'm
Here
like,
we go.
It's the ego.
The director was sleeping.
You can go back to normal. That's
too
fine.
busy.
I don't need to be. See now the microscope's on me.
Yeah.
And Alex is the best looking one of all three of us. So Alex, become the big exploded picture.
He was distracted by his smiling.
Yeah. Alex is always so very happy. It's great though. It really is.
Guess what I did tonight? Or today, actually. I took the day off, which is weird. I spent the day with my old best friend that I haven't seen in 46 years.
Wow.
Think about that.
Yeah. Think about that reunion.
Half a century. We picked up right where we left off, jibbing, jabbing, whatever, talking about all this stuff. We just, have so much in common. And then you go, oh, that's why we used to be good friends.
Did he stop and say, wow, you got old?
No, but I called him Grandpa a couple times.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
I'm sure that made him feel good about himself.
We're at a restaurant. Okay, we're at a restaurant. And then I hand the menu, and it's a normal size menu. And he goes, gee, do you wonder if they have any burgers here? And I'm thinking, dude, flip your menu over, Grandpa.
Not only did you meet your friend, which is great and wonderful, then you proceeded to insult him almost immediately.
Well, yeah, of course. Well, like you.
Like right away, not even high or anything. Like, hey.
But then I started giving the waitress crap too immediately.
Well, you got to give, the waitress.
But she had my number. She had my number by the end of the dinner. She goes, would you be quiet?
Yeah. Just shut up.
Just shut up. Because I kept going, I want my check. And she's like, no, I'm talking to your friend.
Yeah.
I said, well, could you just get my check while you're talking to my friend? She goes, would you be quiet?
Oh, huge news before I forget.
What?
Abe has released the lineup for the 3rd annual Minnesota Bigfoot Conference, by the way.
Lay it on us.
We got Cliff Barkman. He'll be again there. And then we're going to have Maria Mayer and Russ Accord and Ken Gerhardt.
Oh, great. Okay.
They're all going to be there. So, and festivities kick off October 7th. And
I've worked with Ken a lot on MonsterQuest, but I don't think I've ever met him in person.
We're going to get a chance to meet him.
Yeah, there you go.
So we're going to be hanging out there that weekend. So get your tickets. They're up for sale, eventbrite.com. And you can get your tickets and come hang out with us and have a lot of fun and
Alex,
do that kind of stuff.
Are you going to go to one of these?
He's coming to this one.
Oh, I mean, I got to come to at least one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, he's going to come with us.
That's a good one.
Hang out.
It's a good one.
Yeah. It is a good one. But anyhow, getting back to you and hanging out with your friend you haven't seen in 46 years.
Yeah, something like that. It's been so long, Joel, I don't even remember. But we used to race on motocross back in the days, which is, I think, why we really originally started hanging together, because we both had the same motocross bike. It was a Yamaha.
And that's how you guys kind of met, was through motocross, having a good time, ripping it up. A couple of young guys hanging around together.
And unlike him, I could probably still race motocross.
Oh, I'm sure you could. Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm just joking.
Yeah.
But no, it was just kind of weird, because it's like Hot Tub Time Machine. you see each other, and obviously when you're young and and all of a sudden, bam, you're transported half a century into the future, and there you are. And we're talking about all our friends that have died.
Oh my God.
Well, literally, there's been so many of them that aren't with us anymore.
Wow, you're right. You're not wrong at all.
No, it's scary.
Even from the first of the year, a lot of people I knew have already passed away.
Yeah,
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Speaking of defying death, which me and Bill so far have. Bill Thielbar is his name, by the way. Okay, did you catch the video of the guy that's driving the Chevy truck? He drives and he goes literally right through the tornado.
What?
The truck flips upside down, spins around, and then it flips back normal and he keeps driving. And Chevy is using it already for marketing. It happened in Texas.
Oh, I bet they are grabbing that thing.
And it's like, oh, Chevy tough.
Yeah, I have not seen that video.
You have not? Oh,
I'm gonna have to check that video out.
It's all over the internet. It's easy to find. Just just type in, Texas tornado, flips and spins around a Chevy truck.
I'll have to definitely check that out.
It's worth seeing. But
I bet it is.
But only in Texas. Can you imagine? Just think about how cool the guy in the car felt. The guy in the truck driving.
Oh God!
He probably didn't even spill his coffee. He was so
probably not. He's Texas tough. He didn't care. You think a little tornado is going to stop him? Oh, hell no!
It didn't even slow him down, Joe.
You think the tornado should be afraid of him?
I think the truck flipped over like 6 times, spun around like 20, but he just kept driving a straight line.
And he landed on his wheels and he drove away.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's just incredible footage.
Yeah, I'd have to be changing my pants.
I just wish it would have happened to a Ford truck.
Why?
Well, I don't know. I'm kind of a Ford.
Are you really? I did not know that about you. Wow. I did not know you like Fords. Then why do you drive a Jeep? Why not a Bronco?
Well, because that's a Dodge owns it. It's not a Chevy.
Well,
I have a Corvette. Okay.
Dodge doesn't own Ford.
Yeah, I am a Chevy fan. I have a Corvette. So
I hate them all.
Yeah.
As a mechanic, I've been doing that for years. They all break down. They're all getting more complicated.
Yeah. Well, let me read this about this truck, sure. the official news release. It says, not much can get between a Texan and their trucks. Not even a tornado. A young driver of a 2004 Chevy Silverado 1500 crew cab was suddenly in the throes of a tornado Monday on Texas 95 in Elgin. Excuse me. Footage of the harrowing scene was caught by several storm chasers, including Brian M. Finger, who posted the video on social media. The Atlanta Police Department. Why does it say Atlanta? Oh, this is something totally different. Never mind. I went into another news story. Sorry. It happened in Texas.
Now, Michael over here in the audience, he has it right. He says the guy, he casually cruised away. Now that's cool. Now if you get spun around,
oh dude, it was so casual,
and you just casually drive away like Cool Hand Luke, man. Like it didn't even bother you one bit.
I guarantee it didn't even.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, like Alex just said. Oh yeah.
But look, when it's not your day, it's not your day.
That's right. That's right. Think of the story he's going to be able to tell later on. Hell, even tonight, he's probably
because he's got footage to prove it. Could you imagine if that would have happened? He didn't have footage.
Could you imagine the one-upping conversations he have with his friends? Yeah, well, I drove through a tornado and I lived.
Well, I can tell you another firsthand tornado story I knew from Texas. Well, I'd flown this guy up because he was attacked by a deer, and I had him bring the antlers with him of this deer that attacked him. He was from Texas, but he had called me right before the shoot and said, our house got taken by a tornado. The antlers are gone. I mean, the whole house got swept away. He said they held on to the water pipes on the water heater, and he emailed me the photos, and all that was left of the entire house was that water heater. He said the linoleum underneath them was sucked away from underneath their feet, and they were all safe. They didn't get a scratch on them. And he said, well, the antlers are gone, obviously. And I said, oh man, that's a bummer, blah, blah. He calls me back the next day. He said, I literally found him like 20 miles away on my way to work. laying in the road or the highway.
Yeah, yeah.
So tornadoes
Those are
really-
enchanted antlers, is what
Yep.
they are.
So he was just, yeah. Could
Just
you
good luck
imagine?
charm. Just
But
good luck
having
charm.
the linoleum sucked out from under your feet.
That would be weird. That would be a crazy, crazy
Oh,
moment.
When this guy showed me the photos, there was nothing left but that water, that hot water heater.
Jeez,
So
man.
something to remember, to hang on to the water heater.
Years ago, when I was living in the South, because I'm from up here, northern Minnesota, but when I lived down there, I first moved down there, and tornado watching was a sport down there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
People pull over, they're watching these things. It's like you kidding me? That's insane.
I used to have a number of storm chasers that worked for me, and I had to have an agreement with them where they had this thing where, yeah, I'll come work for you, but if there's a tornado, I get to go.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, that's cool.
And I don't even have to punch out.
No, they would leave on a dime, in the summer. And I didn't blame them.
Well, sure. Think of the awesome footage you could get
Right.
from them.
Right. By the way, gas prices are going through the roof.
Sure.
And I'm
You're
literally hearing about even my neighbors that are getting their gas stolen in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
they're doing is they're drilling into the tanks.
Yep.
They're drilling the tank and draining it.
Yep.
Well, if you are let's say you're at a parking lot, it's happening in parking lots. It's happening all over. But here's the funny thing. So I'm reading this article about this problem, and they're recommending how to avoid this to happen to you. Get a locking gas tank.
Yeah. You could sell. You could buy a lot.
How is that going to help you?
Cap,
But they just
drill a hole in the bottom anyway.
they just got them telling me they're drilling the tanks.
Yeah.
So how is the locking gas cap going to help exactly?
It doesn't. It just makes it harder for you to open it up for
It's
yourself.
it's just gonna sell more drills.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. That's it.
And then yesterday, literally, a guy got a hold of me on Facebook, or no, it was the day before yesterday, and he says, I got some really crazy stuff to talk to you about. Excuse me. And I said, well, let's chat on the phone, because he had sent me this long letter, and already it looked pretty crazy. But part of it, and I want to have him on as a guest, because he's literally done a whole documentary on this one creek in Texas and all of the strange occurrences that are going on along this creek, including finding numerous dead bodies, human bodies, every year.
Wow.
And of course, he cannot, even as an investigator, he cannot get any answers as to what's killing these people. So they're not they're not talking about it.
Yeah, they're not really divulging what their investigation's bearing out.
Right. But here's where it gets weird. He did say he would come on our thing and tell this whole story. But one of the things that he said that really got my attention, he said, we found a coyote that was turned inside out.
Well, you don't see that every day, Doug.
No.
You just don't see that every day.
And another one that was tied in a knot. So think about that a while. Ugh, it's horrid.
That's gruesome.
Mm-hmm.
That is, wow, that's something
It's
else.
really bad.
Yeah, that makes you really want to hang around. Yeah, in that area. Yeah.
So anyhow, we're going to have him on. Just wanted to do a tease on that, but boy, that's weird. And I did talk to him on the phone, and we had a long conversation.
Doug,
Really
would you
cool.
go
Oh, where? To this area?
to that area and hang
Yeah,
out?
of course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. You do that.
I'm not alone.
You go there, hang out, smear yourself some barbecue sauce.
I'll bring
Come on
Alex.
out there.
Oh,
That's good. I'll stay here.
First, we're going to go to the Potato Museum in Idaho, and then we're going to drive down to Texas, Bushy
Check
Creek,
that. You guys
Texas.
should really go check that out. I'll stay in the safety of the studio here.
Right, but he's got a
Pretty sure.
dock, and it's called The Beast. I think it's called The Beast of Bushy Creek, something like that.
Wow, we're gonna have to check that
Oh,
out.
there's
Check
somebody
that out.
said Anthony said that he's seen the documentary.
Yeah, I'll check that out. Anthony, if you get a chance, if you don't mind dropping a link in the chat room, if you're able to do that, Anthony, that'd be killer.
Very cool.
But only if you have time or want to do that.
And you can't watch the doc until we're done with the radio show.
Well, that's true.
yeah,
That's true.
that is true.
Rule,
I
because
will
we'll
be-
know.
We will know. We will
We will know. And
But that is scary stuff, though.
Yeah.
I mean, and and I got a report from an area in Texas, another Texas area, this place called Crybaby Bridge, where a Bigfoot was mimicking the crying sound of a baby.
Yeah, it's kind of a common thing. I've heard that numerous times.
Yeah, scary stuff though, man. I mean, it's scary and intriguing all at the same time. That's what makes me keep doing it.
It almost seems like they're trying to lure people to them, and that's kind of creepy.
Yeah, isn't that nuts though? You know, they're luring people out, and that's the scary part too. Are they getting to the point to where they're taking more notice of us?
Well,
that we're looking for them. They know we're looking for them, so now they're starting to be proactive.
Right. Well, I watched a podcast the other day. God forgive me, I can't remember which one. Or listened to a podcast. Did I say watched?
Yeah,
I listened. Okay, but there was a guy that was talking about, or he brought up the point. He said, "I really find it strange that there's so many cabin attacks, so many home attacks, but yet they never break in." And I went, "Yeah, you got a point. Never heard of one other than the Snowgrove cabin."
I was just saying, but didn't you have?
There was nobody there. But I'm talking about with people in it. There was nobody there.
That's true. That's true. You never hear about them going in
a home
while people are in there. I mean, they'll mess around outside. They'll look in the windows. They'll tap. They seem to like to tap with their fingers on windows, bang, stuff like that. But they never actually intrude in.
Right. Maybe it's like maybe it's like the black-eyed kids. They have to be invited in.
Oh, who knows? Who knows?
I don't know.
But easily, I mean, these things are so huge and enormous. If they want to get in, they're getting in.
Yeah, it's true. I have a lot of weird news I was going to kind of go over, and then I've got this deep dive into. It's probably boring, but it isn't boring. But a deep dive into onions.
Oh,
onions.
Get out of my swamp. No.
Well, we all eat them constantly, but I just thought,
So what made you hold on? What made you want to take a deep dive into onions? Were you sitting there at your computer one day?
Because I started like craving them really bad. I was like, why am I craving onions so bad? I was like chopping up tons of them, like putting a whole onion on a salad.
Yeah.
And I was just like, well, is this going to hurt me? Is it going to do anything? Are they good for you? And one day then Yvette goes, did you know, I read an article that onions are almost pure sugar. And I went, oh, that's kind of weird.
I had no idea.
Yeah, they're almost pure sugar and fiber. That's
about it, huh?
Yeah, but anyhow, we'll get back to the onions. I don't want to talk about that now.
Wow, you just kind of went from onions to what now?
Yeah, ADHD. Here we go.
Yeah.
So what else? Okay, we covered that. So there was a video, and I really recommend they look at this because it's just so mind-blowing. There is this new cruise ship they just got done with. Like literally, somebody's vibrating and humming. Who is that? It's not me.
Oh, Blaine's coming in. The garage door's opening.
Oh, it's giving interference.
It's right below me.
Ah, I wonder what is that sound?
Anyhow, I thought maybe the aliens are coming to get you. Finally, I'm like, thank God. What took you guys so long?
But anyhow, this cruise ship is so big. They have like Forest Planet on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a city. No, it's so much bigger than a normal cruise ship. You've got to check it out.
You ever been on a cruise?
No, I haven't. And
I've never been either.
I thought if this thing was out in the ocean, right? Like if it was out in the ocean and it was bad, it would be such a slow, deep roll.
Oh, God.
That you would be going up like 50, 60, 70, 100 feet in the air and then down.
Yeah.
I would go on this cruise ship if they parked it and I could just stay on it for a week. Parked.
Yeah. Not in the middle of the ocean, but somewhere where it's docked.
How often? Yeah, and you ask yourself, how often is the ocean really calm? I don't know. Maybe people that have taken cruises would know. Has anybody in the audience had a really bad experience on a cruise? That's what I don't want.
Yeah, well, no one wants a bad experience.
Well, the rough seas and like
I've heard from people that have taken cruises on really big ocean liners that, according to them, you don't feel it a whole lot after you kind of get used to it.
That ain't what I heard.
That's what I heard. I heard that you don't feel it, but then again, they could be wrong.
That's not what I've heard.
What did you hear? puke.
Oh, I've heard like people just sick for days.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's vomiting. Some of these cruise ships hold like 3,000 or 4,000 people.
And then you kind of found out through the whole, what we just went through, that whatever hits a cruise ship goes like wildfire in that cruise ship, whatever bug.
Well, yeah. Obviously, COVID and or whatever, flu or whatever.
Right.
It's not good. Yeah, they've had cases, and I can't think of the name. I did a show on it for NBC because they were having a plague of it at golf courses. It's like a flu-like viruses, and I can't think of it. And people were getting sick from the water, drink fountains, all water courses. Yeah. But I can't think of the name of the disease. I'm drawing a blank. And I used to get that all the time when I was a kid. I mean, it was just rampant when we were kids. Because back then, they didn't know about this stuff. It was nothing to get the flu once a month.
Wow.
I mean, it wasn't but it wasn't flu. It was this disease I'm talking about. It was vomiting, very much it would upset your stomach.
And they figure it's in the water.
It was caused by, it's a bacteria that's spread by water. Like it will get on the fountain at school, and then everybody will get it.
Everybody will get it and get real sick.
But I swear to God, we would get the flu like that once a month.
When
we were kids. See, it was tough back when I was young, Joel.
Yeah, listen to you. Walking to school both ways uphill.
Yeah, we definitely had
snowstorms in
June. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But anyhow, okay. So this cruise ship, this video, it's 164 tons, can carry 4,000 passengers. Could you imagine loading that thing with 4,000?
No, I don't think I'd want to be on that cruise ship. That's just too many people.
And apparently this thing did just a recent launch and it beached.
Yeah.
It got beached in the, let's see here, Dominican Republic.
4,000 people. That's a lot of people on a ship.
Yeah. Have you ever noticed when they have like a refund coming to like people on a cruise, they always want you to go on another cruise,
right?
And you're thinking,
"Hey, we know you had a crappy time, but here's a coupon for another cruise."
Yeah, exactly. They always want to refund you with another cruise, or if you have a crappy, like a flight, they want to just give you another bad flight.
Yeah. In lieu of giving you money back, here's another bad time. Opportunity to have another bad time.
Yeah, and then of course, remember we were talking about the Boeing 737.
Yes.
And you heard what happened in China? Did you see the footage?
Yeah.
Straight down, dude.
Right now. Nose diving down, man.
And I'm wondering if it wasn't that same. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's not. Yeah. That thing plowed straight down like a missile.
It did. It's scary stuff, though. It's scary. And I wonder if they told their pilots that they're putting a new program on.
Yeah.
I mean, because that was part of the problem here is they weren't really training the pilots in on how to use this new device.
Yep.
This new software.
And then I read something that was kind of like weird. They were remodeling this, the construction crews were remodeling the Henry J. Kaiser Convention Center in Oakland, California. And they found a body in the wall.
What?
Yeah, mummified.
Man.
Like from somebody that got trapped in there.
Or
No, they said
walled them in.
Okay, so it said they found the remains, best described as mummified. Conditions in the walls were such that a body was preserved in good conditions. Good condition. I don't know. What the heck? So it said that authorities will obtain fingerprints to identify the deceased. Any theory is possible. It said from someone who got behind the wall and became trapped to someone put the person there, naughty things.
Right.
And I just thought, ooh, that's just so good.
I don't know.
A construction worker that finds that.
Yeah. Could you imagine like you're saying, that construction worker and opening up that wall and finding that body? I mean, geez. Think about the poor person. See, isn't that one of the things that people would be afraid of? Is dying like that?
Yeah.
Behind a wall, no one can hear you scream. You're stuck there, slowly dying. Oh, that sucks. Yeah, right.
That's the worst. That is the worst sound effect I have ever heard in my entire life.
That's all we can afford, Doug.
Alex
all
has
right?
got
That's all
like
we can
the worst.
afford.
Those are the worst. They're so bad, they're good.
Hey, man.
Jeez. And the
It's in the
delivery.
budget.
Yeah, low budget. Yeah, exactly. It's like, could we have some stereo, nice, soft,
Come on, no.
more subtle? No, they
just show up when they want to.
Oh my God.
That's just the way it is, Doug. That's just the way it is.
So there was a lot of weird news in the news, but it was so weird I didn't even understand.
There's a lot of
it.
weird news.
No, but no, there were news articles of weird news that I would read, and I would read the article and go, that was so weird I don't even understand what the hell you're trying to tell me.
Well, that's because you normally just read the headline, then you move on.
No, I know, but I try to figure out what it is. I'm looking at one right now and I'm going, I don't even get it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
well, okay. Tell us the headline for the one that you don't understand.
Oh my God, they're so bad. I don't even want to read them.
Oh.
Oh my God. Okay.
That's it.
So, all right. There was one really kind of weird thing. And I'm thinking, what's going on in the world? So here's a crappy story. And this is kind of disturbing. So this repeat offender, they have these guys that are just in and out of jail.
More disturbing than the wall man, the guy that they
found
behind the wall?
This is far worse
than the wall man.
In fact, if you're eating, you want to shut this
No, that bad. It's a gross out story.
It's bad. Yeah, it is bad. It's a crappy news story. So there's this guy, and they keep arresting him, right? And finally, of course, they let him out again. And of course, First thing he does, he attacks somebody, and he smears his own feces all over the person.
Oh,
I think it's a lady, in their face. So then they of course they arrest him again and then put him out on bail again. He attacked two people. Oh, it was a man that was wearing a yarmulke in Brooklyn, and so they get him again. And they let him out again. It's like, oh my God.
Overcrowding, Doug. It's overcrowding.
No, it's not overcrowding. It's these prosecutors are just, I don't know. They're just letting them go.
Just catch a release.
And you're like, what does it take to keep some of these people? And this guy was a homeless guy. Yeah. But here's where it gets a little weird. He said that if you let me out, he tells the prosecutor. I
remember hearing the story.
If you let me out, I'm going to do something that's going to shock the entire city.
Yeah.
And they let him out.
Yeah.
I remember. What in the world is going on?
That is sad.
Yeah. They got to start holding these judges accountable. It's like, whatever. Okay.
Yeah. It just seems that you're right. It's catch a release.
Yep.
They get them, they release them.
It's worse than that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So, mysterious boom. You remember when that was happening all over?
I do.
Happening in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And there were the mysterious noises that were, kind of emanating all over the world, actually. People were recording them. And I don't know if they were real or not, the sounds.
Yeah.
But I heard it here once. But I heard it here once in Minnesota. And it sounded very metallic, very much like a train, but metallic-y and really thunderous, and like it was coming from the sky.
Did anyone else ever mention it to you? Did you hear that big boom? I mean, when you talk to your neighbors or anyone else, did anyone ever mention?
We've heard these huge booms here in like our area because, they'll shake the whole house, and then people will go on those next door apps and start talking about it. The authorities never have an explanation.
Yeah.
But anyhow, this one jolted seismologists awake. It jolted them awake in Washington Island, down by, I think it's in the Pacific Northwest.
Pacific.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Tom Owens, a retired seismologist, heard the boom, 4 a.m. He reported it to a network to see if it was captured on seismic stations, and it wasn't. So it didn't capture on anything
Wow, that's something else.
Yeah.
But I think we gotta get out of here, don't we, Alex?
Yeah, we do.
Yep. So let's take a quick break here, and we'll be right back with Levi.
Yeah, give us a few seconds. We'll be right back at you guys. Thank you for watching and listening.
We're back.
And we are back, guys.
We're back. You guys keep going.
Sure.
Something happened with Levi. I'm going to help him out
Not
here.
a problem.
And
Not
we'll
a
be right back in
problem
here.
at all.
Hey, Joe.
So you were talking about booms when we left, right?
Yeah.
Now, where I'm from, but I live up here where the mining's going on, active mining.
Right.
Every Wednesday we get those booms. I mean, it's like shakes the house.
Yeah, but they're
giant
blasting
booms.
dynamite. We know what
They're
those are.
blasting. So something like that is what you're saying. I mean, it's a big boom. You're
No. I've actually been up to the mines when they're doing their blasting and filmed it and seen it, been around it. This is something that really sounds like it's coming from above. It sounds maybe 100 times louder than a sonic boom.
Geez, that's loud.
It's loud.
Those sonic booms can get real loud.
Well, one time I witnessed something that I don't think it was a meteorite, because when I tell you the story, it couldn't be. So we were out on the deck one time and we saw a big green flash, huge, lit up the whole sky, no sound. Then we went out the next night. We noted the time at 11 o'clock. We went out the next night, made sure we were out there at 11. 11 o'clock, big green flash again, like the most brilliant green you've ever seen.
Yeah.
This time with a giant boom. There's no way that could have been a meteorite, because the chances of that happening at the exact same time. But why the flash with no sound? And then why the flash?
I wonder what that was you guys saw.
And of course, Yvette goes, oh, maybe it was like a UFO coming into the whatever coming through a portal. And
Maybe
I'm like,
you're witnessing
it's as good as
going to our dimension.
It's a good of explanation as any.
Yeah,
exactly.
That is true. That's odd, though. That's really odd.
Yeah, I'd say. So what else? So I'm going to talk about onions, because they are kind of.
Oh, we have time now to talk about onions. Oh,
well, we might only have a minute here.
Well,
But okay, so, oh my God, I've got 50 really freaky facts on onions.
Lay it on me, man. I like layers as much as the next guy. Go ahead.
Exactly. So, and they're all just kind of interesting, and I don't even know where to start. But China, first off, is they produce more onions than anybody. 20 million metric tons of onions.
Wow. Well, why wouldn't they? They make everything else. So,
India, second, 13 million metric tons. So that's 13 million. I think a metric ton is, it's around 2,000, maybe a little less than 2,000 pounds. Ulysses S. Grant, during the American Civil War, addressed to the War Department, and it read, "I will not move my army without onions." So he requested.
He had to have his onions.
No,
without onions, he wasn't moving.
No, because they used them to stop infection.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
They used them as an antiseptic.
Yeah. Yep. Also, garlic does the same thing. It's also.
Well, that's what I hear. Yeah. So what's the update on Levi, Alex?
All right. So we're good to go. I'm just going to introduce him. We'll get him right on.
Oh, cool.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay, so tonight we have with us Levi Machovec. Levi graduated in 2019 from the University of Wisconsin with a bachelor's degree. He majored in history and minored in statistical analysis. He is the author of the Sasquatch Paradox, the scientific defiance to the recognition of relic hominids. And we're going to have him on and discuss the book and all of his research. Welcome.
Hey, Levi.
Hey, Levi.
Thank you, everyone, for having me on. So,
Hey, not a problem. Our pleasure.
Dang,
Yeah,
you
I know
look,
we have-
you're young. You're young, Levi. You're so young.
I'll be 26 in June.
Oh my God. Well,
I'll
it's
be
young.
able
That's all right, Doug. Don't worry
No,
about
I
it.
know it's awesome.
Yeah, you're just
I haven't
jealous.
met you. I haven't talked to you. Your book is amazing. So when you say defiance, what do you mean? Because defiance is kind of it's, as you probably know, it's an understatement.
Mhm.
Well, I found, so how I kind of got to this book was that I found that I can out-argue like all of my friends on this topic, like pretty easily. And
Sure.
a lot of my friends are smarter than me, so I like to pull this out kind of like as a trump card, like, you know, you may be smarter, but I can still beat you in this argument. And I can pull out the Patty film, I can pull out footprints, I can pull out like the dermal ridges, like all those kinds of things. I can pull out the history and they will just be like, yeah, but how come we haven't found one yet?
Mhm.
And that was always the thing they said was, but if they're real, how come we haven't found one yet?
Yeah.
So with this book, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to answer that. Why haven't we found one? And well, it's pretty clear we haven't found one. We haven't found one because the scientific community isn't taking an interest into the subject. And so to answer your question, the reason I use the word defiance is because they're actively going out of their way to stop any sort of research into this subject. If you're a university professor and you put an interest in this, it can ruin your career. If you're like someone who presents evidence to them, they will most likely like laugh at you or just not even give you the time of the day. And if there are scientists who are interested or like university professors who are interested, they will talk to people like Dr. Meldrum and they will see it behind closed doors because they're afraid that their careers and their reputations will be ruined just by showing an interest in the subject.
Okay, Levi, it begs the question, why? Why are they stifling why are they trying to suppress it? Why do they not want any kind of research or serious research done about Bigfoot?
So I'm an optimistic person, so I don't like to assume that they do so out of like poor intentions. I think it has to do with just the psychological aspect of people not wanting to be told that they're wrong. I mean, there's times when, for example, here's a good story. When I was living in Milwaukee, my roommate was like really fit and I was getting kind of fat because I was eating way too much food. And he's like, yo, you need to count your calories. I'm like, I'm not going to count your calories. Why would I listen to you? But he was right. But because I didn't want to admit I was wrong, I didn't listen to him. And I think that's part of the thing that's going on right now is that scientists most scientists are smart. They've had to go through a lot of schooling and a lot of just research to get to where they are in their field. So when average people tell them, hey, there's an ape in the woods, they'll be like, haha, yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
When it's, and it's kind of like people don't like to listen to people who aren't as smart as them. And like, I hate to say it, but that's just something that happens. And people are afraid to be wrong. So they would rather not look at the evidence than what they would to look at the evidence and risk potentially being wrong. Because no matter how smart you are, if you are wrong, it hurts. And a lot of people want to avoid that hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to jump a little bit forward. How in the world did you get interested even in the topic and defending, the topic?
I mean, I'm kind of weird, so I get dragged into this stuff. No, well, I mean, I had a friend who had a sighting when I was young, and it was something that always interested me. And I had an aunt whose boyfriend had a sighting, and was kind of funny because he was like a biker. Like he was a mean man. Like he would drink a lot. I'm sure he would like hit my aunt.
You're the
Like,
tough guy, is what you're
yeah,
saying.
tough guy. Not someone you want to mess with. And he nearly broke down in tears when he told me a story of his Sasquatch encounter.
Wow.
So it was something that always interested me, but I didn't really start like researching it until like really 2017 when I really got into it.
So, but you haven't had any experiences yourself?
There was one night when, so I've got like a photographic memory, so I bring that up because I can like detail, I remember like some certain like odd details and it like weirds people out. But this exact night happened March 9th, 2013. But in the course of the night, we heard 3 Ohio howls. So I can tell that story if you want. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, please do.
It was a Saturday, so you can look it up. You'll find it was a Saturday. We went to our high school because it was just before baseball season, so we were setting up our indoor batting cages because we had practice the next week. And I heard some guys talking about going out squatching, and I'm like, I'm coming with. I forced my way into this. And the one guy had a little bit of land not too far from a sighting that I know of, so it was like, yeah, I'll go out there. And we went out there, and I'm splitting up the short story a little bit, but there was 4 guys eventually who went out, including me, and we were going to split across and go into this valley and like just do calls back and forth to each other across this valley. But then when we were going to split apart, the guys were kind of like, yo, let's not do this. This isn't a good idea. I'm like, whatever. I'm like, this is fine. And so we went to this one point, and I remember vividly the night because the coyotes were howling. That's right around the end of the mating season because they normally start mating in February around here. And they were howling like throughout when we first walked out in the woods and we're like getting set. And we didn't have any like recording equipment. And I told them to pull their phones out. So I like did a howl. And after like 15 seconds, I'm like, okay, guys, you can shut your phone off. Nothing's going to respond. And like 5 seconds after we shut the phones off, we heard an Ohio howl. And it's hard to describe, but like I felt it more than I heard it because it was like so powerful. And the weirdest thing was that the coyotes went completely silent at this time.
Oh, wow.
And we were dumbfounded. And
I bet.
we were dumbfounded. We're like, okay, I'm going to do a call back. So I called back, and then we heard a second howl like almost immediately after mine, but this one was closer to us. And we were only like 200 yards from his house. But when that second one went off, I don't remember which one of the guys it was, but one of the guys decided to run back. And then the second guy ran back. And then the third guy started running back. And I was like, guys, don't run. And this guy turned around. He's like, screw you, Levi. And then he ran back to the house. I was out in the woods by myself. I'm like, I've got to get out of this woods. I can't be here by myself.
So your buddies got spooked, right? So they hear the howls, and one at a time, they start just kind of retreating out of there. You're the only one left.
Look, I could tell you so many stories of people just suddenly freaking out and running, and they'll just leave their buddy behind. They'll take off in a car and leave their friends out in the woods. I've heard so many stories because when you're afraid, it just, your instincts take over. Survival. Totally.
Because I was into the subject. I'm like, I want to stay out here.
Yeah.
But I was thinking like, I can't be out here by myself because I didn't have any sort of like weapon or any flashlight with me. And that's before I had like a smartphone. So I was like, I got to go back. Yeah. So I turned around and started running. And funny enough, a third one, even closer, howled. And at that moment, I like lost my footing and I was falling over, and I felt like a person in a horror movie, that one who can't like start their vehicle, except it was me who was like falling, and it felt like it was in slow motion. I was falling slowly and I could not get back up to save my life. And I legitimately thought I was going to die in that moment. I laugh now, but it was not funny then. I eventually got up and ran back to the house. And I remember my dad's like so not into Bigfoot. And I like called him like, Dad, we just had an encounter. He's just like, okay.
Okay, that's great. That's great.
It's also late too, so I can't blame him.
Yeah.
Do you think fear plays a role in people not wanting to believe in the topic? Because if there's another hominid running around out there that maybe even smarter than us, that's very scary to people. I mean, what are your kind of thoughts on fear and not believing based on fear?
Well, I would say that with me, when I think of fear, I think of people who are afraid to come out and talk about their encounters.
Okay.
Like people are afraid of the ridicule. That's what I think of when with fear. Because and it's possible that scientists are afraid of the possibility of facing something that's intelligence is much closer to us than any other animal, and that is something that
Levi, I've heard a lot of different theories on exactly what you're talking about, and one of them, oddly enough, we talked about right in the show, was the economic impact that's possible, like having to sub habitat and the logging industry. I mean,
yeah, but that would
I never thought about that before, though, Doug.
But that would be fear from the government.
But I mean,
disclosing what you
well,
might
yeah, but see now if they stop research in its tracks, something they don't have to tackle later is what I'm saying. It won't become an
You're
issue.
saying like if they can't get any research grants for it.
Exactly.
Okay. I gotcha. Indirect fear.
Mm-hmm.
Indirectly. But have you ever thought about that, Levi? That maybe the sky, I'm just talking about the average person out there that doesn't take an interest in the topic because they don't want to know. That freaks them out, thinking there could be a upright creature like us, like we're not the top of the food chain type fear.
Well, I think I'll answer that with not directly, but like for me, I don't believe in ghosts, and I don't believe in ghosts because stories of ghosts like scare the living daylights out of me.
Okay,
My
well, that's
mom
what I mean.
works in a nursing home, and she's had like freaky ghost stories that not just like her, but like the other employees and the residents. She's in assisted living, so like they're fine. They'll like tell these stories that are just like so freaky. I, for one, don't want to believe in it because it's too scary. So if I know I think like that, so I'm sure there are plenty of people who think in the way that you're talking about, Doug. So I think you're definitely onto something.
Yeah, just because it scares you doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
I was just trying to bring up a topic that maybe wasn't covered in your book. So why don't you start maybe give us more insights into your book, Levi, and what topics you covered and the chapters and those kinds of things.
Well, I self-published a book in 2020, and there are some things that I did that I liked, and there are other things that I didn't like. So I wanted to kind of like address the stuff that I didn't like in like the Sasquatch Paradox. And one of the things I didn't I read The Discovery of Sasquatch by Dr. John Bindernagel, and I read that after I wrote my first book. So I wanted to like incorporate the stuff that's in that book.
Some of the arguments.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I guess like I start off the book with the Patterson Gimlin film because that's probably the single strong, like for just like singular events, like singular pieces of evidence, it's the strongest piece of evidence that we have. But then I also go into like other, like the Mayaka 8 photos, which I think are like extremely convincing, footprints, evidence, Native American stories, because those stories it's eerie how similar Native American stories are for over hundreds of years from like different parts of the country. It's definitely eerie. But I just kind of go into that to like start. The first part of the book is basically convincing people that Bigfoot is real. Mm-hmm. And the second part of the book is like, why haven't we found it? And that's where I get into like the history of like the scientific, because there's like a natural resistance that each theory has to come to light. So like when Charles Darwin presented the theory of evolution, it's not like scientists accepted it right away. They fought it because you're supposed to fight it. If it's a new theory and it's a strong theory, it can hold up to scrutiny. And that's basically what I get into is like Sasquatch can survive that scrutiny. It just hasn't had a chance to face that scrutiny because scientists don't allow it to.
Yeah, good answer. Good point.
I gotta say, when we received your the draft, the manuscript you submitted, I was very impressed. I mean, it's honest to God, it's surprising to know how young you are because of the research and all the footnotes and the the sources that you had, and everything was so articulate, well put together, and structured.
I had a fantastic editor too. Like, he does phenomenal work. So like, I don't want to like make it seem like it's just me, but like, big thing is like I've read a lot, and like, I went to part of my courses. I went to TW Platteville. Is that you had to take historiography to get a history degree, and historiography is like the history of history, and that was like the first time that I did like a big research project. And at the same time, I was also doing an independent study on the Yeti, and I did an independent study on the Patterson Gimlin film later. So like that kind of research like set me up into writing the books. And I mean, I've read the Bigfoot books so many times that I know like where like a lot of the things are, like the general like sections. So like citing is pretty easy because I can just go and like, oh yeah, this part's here and this part's here. And there's times when it's like, oh yeah, I don't remember this, but I just learned something because I had to go back through looking for the source. So like, it just kind of like all that like accumulates. And I read a lot of non-Bigfoot stuff too, and like just reading so much, you just kind of get like, you improve your ability to write by reading more.
Well, you mentioned the Patterson Gimlin film. Take us through that. What I mean, because it still holds up. I mean, it is the holy grail of evidence. What's your feelings on that video?
It's funny. I was telling you earlier about how I can argue with friends, and they won't be able to like beat me in the argument, and that's where they'll say like, I have to admit, like, you beat me like good on the Patterson Gimlin film. Like, I have no answer to that. So there's, without looking at like any of the suit details, like the quote unquote suit details, or like 8 suit details in like that time period, we can definitely get a pretty good idea of the authenticity of the Patterson Gimlin film, because one, the location doesn't make any sense. That one's one that's been talked about a lot. I believe it's like an 8-hour drive to get from where Roger Patterson lived to the Bluff Creek area. He would have had a truck and horse trailer. I mean, he would have been taking a lot of equipment. Like, that's a lot of effort to fake it, when in his book, he has 5 different locations around his house where hairy giants are seen most, is what the key says. 5 different locations around his house, and then he drives south 8 hours instead. That seems a bit unusual. In the book, I believe all the drawings except for one of Bigfoot's are of female, or of males. There's only like 1 or 2 females, so that doesn't make any sense why he would make a female suit when he was used to drawing the male suit. Like, people, when they make CGI today, they draw what they're going to make first, so that they have an idea. Yeah. So I mean, if somebody was going to hoax a suit, drawing it seemed like drawing what you want to hoax would make the most sense. And after the film, he died less than 5 years after the film. And when he was on his deathbed, one of the things he said was, "I was the worst person this could have happened to." When Ray Wallace died, Ray Wallace admitted, like, yeah, I hoaxed a lot of stuff, but Patterson didn't. That's a bit unusual. Obviously, that doesn't mean that much, but I would say, why didn't he go to Hollywood and sell this technique? Because if he was, because John Chambers made a lot of money when he was in Hollywood, and by today's standards, I think it'd be at least like $10 million, because he knew how to make prosthetic facial, because he worked on, I believe it was the Korean War. He worked on people who had injuries. He used like prosthetics to make their injuries look better. So he knew how to work with makeup, and that was at a time when Hollywood was really closed off to the outside world. You had to know somebody to get in.
Yeah.
So like, if you had a skill, they would bring you in, and you would be rewarded for it. But that's
Well, the best
But-
Hollywood had to offer was, I think, Planet of the Apes is out about that time, and that was cutting edge costume technology for the time.
Yeah, but you could immediately tell whatever was in it that it was a costume.
Right, exactly. I mean, look how
Yeah.
bad. I mean, I like Planet of the Apes and next to the next, as much as the next guy. But when you watch the movies, I mean, it's
Right.
obvious, what they are.
Well, one of the questions I want to ask Levi, and then we're going to have you continue with your argument on the. You're doing a great. You're bringing up points no one else has ever brought up, like the prosthetics and the chambers. But one of the things I want to ask you is, like a lot of people, you see the Patterson Gimlin footage, and you instinctually know it's a real animal. It's not a suit. If I showed you a black bear, a guy in a black bear suit, you'd instantly know it was fake, or a CGI black bear. You know instantly. It's instinctual. We have many visual clues and cues that happen, that our brain goes through a million little processes. And I remember as a little kid even, I'm 10 years old, and I see that photo, and I knew immediately it was real. Because I'd been used to seeing fake costumes on Lost in Space and these other cheesy Hollywood movies, and they always look so bad. And you saw that, and you just like, dang, that's real. You could see the muscles, and you could see tendons, and there were just things in that I've never seen in a suit. But did you have that same feeling, Levi, the first time you watched it?
So funny enough, when it comes to the PGF and Bigfoot as a whole, I didn't believe in Bigfoot.
Okay.
I was convinced by the evidence. And with the PGF's the same way. I didn't believe it. I thought it was fake. Like, in my heart of hearts, I wanted it to be real. But I just, like, man, that's got to be a man in a suit. There's no way Bigfoot could be real. But it wasn't until I started reading, like Bill Munns wrote When Roger Met Patty. I don't know if you've read it, but it's like the best book on it. And when he starts getting into like the intricate details, and that's when I'm like, the light bulb kind of goes off. It's like, oh, yeah. I never thought to look at the muscles. I never thought to look at like.
Okay, so you were convinced in reverse.
Yep.
First the evidence, and then the belief came. For me, it was literally instant looking at that. I didn't need to know the other facts because I was looking at a real animal. I was very observant as, I used to watch a ton of wildlife films. You just know when something's real and when it's fake. I think that skill came to me because I would watch a lot of horror movies, and I would probably zoom in with my brain. So I never was afraid as a child, knowing it was just a guy in a suit. I was never convinced. But when I saw that, I was like, oh man, that's not a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
Did you see it in a theater?
I didn't see it in a theater, but I saw the still photos. So it started out by seeing a number of still photos or frame grabs, which were always the best. They showed more detail. And I remember the first thing I saw was a very, it was like I would say probably a 10-inch still photo. It was on the cover of Boy's Life or one of these, magazines that was in the library at school. And I looked at that and it was like, that's real. Just boom. It was just that quick. Never knowing, that I would go on to, do forensic studies on the film later in life. And people say, well, Jeff's done forensics. Yeah, so is Jeff Glickman, who tried to disprove it. He set out to disprove it, and he couldn't. And if you don't have the Glickman report, you need to get it because it's very, very little known about it, but it's fantastic. And then I remember Bill Munns, calling Bill up for the first time and saying, Bill, have you ever seen the Patterson Gimlin footage? And he had never really paid much attention to it. And it wasn't until we did a MonsterQuest episode. And I said, Bill, you need to really study this and just give me your honest opinion, because he was a suit maker. And he did. And after he started really looking at in reverse, like you, Levi, in reverse, he came to the conclusion it was real based on, reversing out joint lengths and things that he was seeing that a man couldn't fit in that suit, period.
Well, yeah, for a lot of different reasons. I mean, look how long the arms would have to be on that individual.
Well, it's not the arms.
I mean,
It's not the arm length, Joel. It's not the arm length. It's a joint relationship.
That's what I mean. I mean, it's just impossible. It really
Because you would have to have a joint near your wrist or above your, in between on your forearm in order to make it work.
I believe the guys.
Go ahead.
There was a Janos Prohaska, I believe his name. He was an ape man, and that's basically what they called the Hollywood ape suit makers. And because they would make the suits and act in the suits, and he was on an old Bigfoot documentary. I think it was the one with Leonard Nimoy, who In Search of, maybe.
Correct.
And he's talking on that, and he's like, the suit, he's like, it looks very real. He's like, I couldn't do that. He's like, if it's anything, it's like a makeup job where somebody painted like because they tape like hair or glue hair onto them, and he's like, it would have taken a minimum of 10 hours to do. And if you like do the math, that would mean that Roger Patterson would have been doing like makeup at 3:00 in the morning in the California in the woods of Northern California. So and it's like, another thing I want to touch on is, I forgot the guy's name, but there's a guy on YouTube who shows a picture of like an ape suit that he's had. And he's like, well, I sold this to Roger, and these are the adjustments he made to make it look so real. And I kind of laughed because I'm like, well, if it was that easy, then why wasn't Hollywood using your ape suits and making those same adjustments?
Sure.
Well, it's been documented that Roger did buy a suit, but it was for a reenactment. It wasn't for Patty. It wasn't anything like Patty.
And something that really tipped me in favor of the Patterson Gimlin film being authentic was that Roger rented the camera in May, and I believe it was May 17th of 1967. But the rental he had was only a 2-day rental. And that just kind of blew my mind, because if he was planning on hoaxing this, let's say he did hoax this, that would have meant he would have needed to practice his craft, because you just don't get that good, because the best in Hollywood weren't that good, and they practiced for years. Yeah. So, I mean, you would have to practice that. And what would have stopped the police from going into his house to grab that camera, which they would have had a right to do, because that rental was overdue by months. And I mean, if the police went there, they would have surely found some sort of evidence of him hoaxing. Now, that's not illegal or anything, but it would have ruined the hoax before it began. Like, why take that kind of risk? Because if Roger could make an ape suit with this capability, he had to be somewhat smart, because he was able to outsmart every single person who's ever come past it since that, who's tried to debunk the video. So he would have had been somewhat smart, but doing something like that would have been stupid. And driving 8 hours south would have been stupid. So, and running through the creek, which we know happens in the video, because you can see stills of the creek early on in the video, in cowboy boots, is stupid, because he could have lost all of that film.
Yeah. Somebody asked a question here: which story is true? Philip Morris made the suit like he claims, or the suit was made from green horse? Neither. That's my answer. Neither of those stories are true. Neither.
Because I would say, if it's that easy to make suits of that capability, we would have seen Hollywood doing it.
Of course.
I believe King Kong in 1976 with the dude, the Big Lebowski, that suit cost, I believe, 6 figures. I thought I read that somewhere. Why would Hollywood
Jeff Bridges,
yeah. Why would they spend? Thank you. I couldn't think of his name. But why would they spend that much on a suit when making a quote unquote suit is as easy as what some people like to make it sound? And as Kevin Morrison just said, he's right. The first 2/3 of the film are of the surrounding area. It wouldn't make much sense to hoax a film with that last bit of film that you have, because with that last third, if you mess up your hoax, you'd have to put in a new reel. If you start off with a new reel, and let's say you mess up the hoax, you can just stop the reel, cut that reel off once you're done, and then refilm the rest of it.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to risk it. You're right.
I like the way you think, Levi. you have a different, you're looking at everything a little differently, with a different twist. And these are all the things that, to me, just support the reality of what the footage looks like.
Mm-hmm.
You follow me? So you keep bringing up new things that keep solidifying that we're looking at a real creature. And then of course you have Bob Gimlin. Have you had the pleasure, Levi, to talk to Bob?
No, but I've heard him talk, and it's like, wow, this is like
Yeah.
a genuinely nice dude. He is so much nicer than me. I try to be nice, but the things that he says to people, like I was listening to, I think, Sasquatch Chronicles, and people were calling in and talking to him, and he was the nicest person.
He is. I was lucky enough to spend a number of days. I even got to go back to Bluff Creek for the first time with Bob. He had never been back there. And so that was such a pleasure to go with him to Bluff Creek. But my impression of him from the moment I met him to the end is this is one of the nicest, most thoughtful, honest people I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah, Bob is a very genuinely nice person.
Oh, he's so genuine. I mean, I remember offering Bob $1 million, Levi, for, just come clean. Tell us how you did it. You pulled this big miracle off. And he goes, Doug, I'd love to take your money, but let me tell you again what happened. He just didn't even think about it, went right off into his same old, telling me the story.
Yeah.
And, if there would have been any hint that Bob could have made $1 million by just telling what happened, I guarantee he would have thought about it first.
But think how it kind of ruined their lives at the same time as a blessing and a curse.
Right.
Yeah,
it did. Yeah, Bob actually told me, he told me numerous times, I wished I would have never seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've heard him say that. Yeah, I wish I never would have seen it. It's actually been ruined my life in some aspects. Which I could see that. I could definitely see that, because now you're known as the Bigfoot guy, the guy that saw Patty. And stuff like that. So I can totally sympathize where he's coming from.
The area of Bluff Creek is not easy to get to anybody that's been there. It's not like you just pull your car up and you're right there. It's still a hike, and if you're gonna do some kind of crazy expensive hoax, that wouldn't have been the location.
That's true.
What happened there?
Yeah, just too many moving parts to go wrong for it to be a hoax. When you think about it, got to do the makeup, middle of the woods. It's far off a beaten path. So you got that to contend with. You got horses to contend with.
Yep.
You've got all those things that could have gone wrong at any time. And so, I mean, for a hoax, that's a stupid hoax to want to pull off.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it would have been.
Something else that Bill Munns brought to my attention is that ape suits at the time were attached to the back of the neck, but the way that Patty turns her head, it's impossible for that to have been the attachment to have been like the headpiece to the chest piece. So he says if it is a suit, it would have had to have been the chest and headpiece together. But the problem with that is that you're in danger of overheating. Like, this is something like Michelle Pfeiffer, I think, in Batman Returns, when she was in Catwoman, I believe they vacuum sealed the suit, and she almost got heat exhaustion because of that. I know when I'm working out in the gym, because sometimes around Christmas time, I'll eat way too much food. So I go into the gym, do cardio in like heavy clothing, and I can't get my sweatshirt off of me because the sweat sticks to me. So they would have the added difficulty of trying to get the suit off, because they'd have to get the entire upper body piece off. Because normally you just get the headpiece off because you lose most of the heat through your head, but you'd also retain it all through your head. We're told during the winter to cover up our heads, because it gets cold here in Wisconsin and Minnesota, that you lose 40% of your heat when it's cold through your head.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Trying to think of some of the other points of just the Patterson Gimlin footage to talk about, because I've got to argue with people constantly too, and it's fun to debate people or educate them, but I've also come up against some of the biggest vocal critics that are kind of well known, of the Patterson creature. Mm-hmm. And you have famous people like Joe Rogan now that are completely poo-pooing the footage. And it would be really interesting, Levi, to get you on the Joe Rogan show to debate, with some of your scientific articles. My arguments are more from a different artistic point of view, more of what I'm seeing with my eyes, more of me, scrolling, frowning back and forth, forward and reverse to look at the muscles moving, the tendons moving. I've spent as much as 40 hours just studying one tendon, to see the movement, showing surgeons to see their opinion and showing them like the lump on the leg that could be a hernia, and having, numerous surgeons going, oh, yeah, I fix those all the time.
What's funny is I haven't mentioned any of that like once, and yet all of that stuff there adds credibility to the Patterson Gimlin film. So if you're convinced now, know that we haven't even gone like halfway into the argument, and we actually look like at the muscles and like what Doug's talking about. Like it definitely weighs much more in favor of the Patterson Gimlin film.
Yeah. Well, what are some of your other arguments, Levi? Some of your other, just on the, on the Patterson footage, if we're not done, let's keep going.
I think the three ape suits we should look at, it would be Harry from Harry and the Hendersons, King Kong from the King Kong movie we talked about, and the apes from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Because under the apes, they are facial prosthetics, they're not full ape suits. So they don't work as well as a comparison as the Dawn of Man apes from 2001: A Space Odyssey, because that came out right around the same time. And Stanley Kubrick was the perfectionist of all perfectionists. He gave, I believe Shelley Duvall's her name, he gave her psychological trauma because of the torments he put her through when he making The Shining, because he wanted the best movie possible. There was a scene that he filmed like 150 times because he wanted it to be perfect. So if there was better ape suits available to Stanley Kubrick, he would have used them, but there weren't. So you'll notice when you look at ape suits, especially the ones with in 2001: A Space Odyssey, which were made by Stuart Freeborn, they have long fur because they use long hair to cover up any places that you might see any mistakes, which with Patty, you don't see long fur. So that would make it more likely that you would see something wrong. He never shows the back of the neck. He does. There's a little bit where you can see the hair curl up a little bit where that seam is, because they're using the hair to cover up the seam. They can only do so good of a job. He shows the back of the neck from only a distance. He never shows it up close because he knows that'll give it away. And they don't turn their heads like we see Patty turn her head, because that would expose the seam that connects the headpiece to the chest piece. When it comes to King Kong was a very expensive suit to make because they used bear pelts, I believe. And I think Rick Baker's on record saying he didn't like to do that because of like the killing bears, but also like getting bear pelts is difficult. So like it's a great suit. It's a fantastic piece of art, but it still pales in comparison to Patty. And there are scenes where you can see like the back of the neck, like how it connects. See the seam. And the proportions are like wrong. The proportions are of like a man in a suit, and the facial proportions don't make any sense. Which is why we look at Harry, because Harry is an actual Sasquatch made by Rick Baker, arguably the single best makeup artist in Hollywood history. And the proportions of the face are wrong in Harry. So Bill Muntz talks about this, and when Roger met Patty, that when you make an ape suit, you have to make the forehead larger to fit the human head inside, because we have bigger brains than apes. Our skulls don't like shoot back above our eyebrows like apes do. I believe it's called the cranial vault, is what it's like the area of our forehead and like above is called. And that's because we need that bigger skull to fit our brains. So to fit a human's head in an accurate ape's head won't work, because their skulls are shaped differently. So you have to make the forehead bigger, like the cone, the head bigger, and then you cheat other aspects of the forehead. So if you compare Harry and Patty side by side, you'll notice that Patty's head is smaller. Harry's is bigger so that they can fit the actor's head inside. But the ears are in wrong proportions, like just everything is off that you would expect. Like the chin is too big, nothing. And another thing is like the hair is long to hide all the details. But in Patty's head is like surprisingly small. When you see frames of her head turned, it's surprising because we like to think of like apes as like big, especially we're used to seeing dominant male silverbacks, but males have bigger heads than females do. So the fact that Patty's got a smaller head is like definitely in favor. And if you were to put a human's head into that like exact size, if you like recreated Patty's head like perfectly, you would not be able to fit a human's head into that type of suit.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get into the breast stretch fabric that you'd have to have, and including the stretch fabric that didn't exist? Didn't even exist for the legs. Basically the whole thing. And the fact today we do have it. No one's duplicated that suit. To me, it's 2022, right? It would be so easy for someone to, get the best makeup artist and really try to duplicate what we see. No one's even come close. I mean, the BBC tried, and that was just miserable.
Laughably bad.
Yeah.
It was really bad.
Because it can't be done, Doug. It can't be.
No, of course it can't be done. And that's why I've just, I would love, for someone to put up $1 million reward, for somebody to go ahead and duplicate the Patterson footage, to where we're just as, where we can see at least the same details. Can't be done even today.
Something that people will say, they'll be like, well, with the arms, you can add arm extensions that make the arms look bigger. I'm like, yeah, you can do that, but that doesn't like address any of the other things that we talked about.
The intermembral index would, intermembral index would still be completely way off.
Mm-hmm.
The torso is longer in Patty. There's like maybe, I think Bill told me this. He said there's maybe 1 in 5,000 people that have a long torso that would match. 1 in 5,000.
Yeah.
And the massive Patty gets overlooked, but like,
the mass.
She looks like almost like
7 foot tall,
in the NFL,
right?
Well, it's just when he puts the leg down, when Patty puts her leg down, you can just see the muscles vibrate, and you can just feel that mass, see it, when it hits and makes impact with the earth.
Also, if you look at one of Roger's drawings in his book, I forgot which page it's on, but he has a drawing of a foot on one of the Sasquatches, and the drawing of the foot is just an enlarged human's foot. But when we can see from the frames, especially that one where Patty's standing on one leg with her right leg, foot pointed toward Roger, that foot structure is completely different than the one he drew. And that goes back to why would he draw something to make something completely different?
Yeah.
You would assume you would use your drawing as inspiration for what you're making.
Yeah. Well, David Ellis brings up too the gait, the walk, the stride of Patty.
Yeah, of course. It's so different.
It's just so different and so large. If you look at her stride, it's huge.
Even if let's say a human can replicate that exact stride in a suit, that still doesn't mean that the PGF is fake, because they haven't addressed any of the other stuff. So when people are like, yeah, but humans can make that stride, and be like, so
no, they can't. There's no way.
No. If you look at the stride and then compare it to people, there's a big difference.
Let's put it this way. I spent probably $30,000 with people and athletes to try to duplicate that stride. It couldn't be done. There's too much hip rotation, compliant gait, with the knees bent, and then you have the knees wallowing in and out, and it's all going on in this very smooth, fluidic motion.
Mm-hmm.
There's too many things.
And look how smooth again Patty walks it, like she's been doing her whole life.
Yeah, well,
somebody that's just doing it maybe the 5th or 6th time in their life, it's not going to be that smooth.
Yep. I coined that the mountain gait because it's obviously has been developed to walk very efficiently up hills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's talk about footprints. I mean, that's also in your book pretty extensively. Footprints. What's your take on that? I mean, what we've all learned from Dr. Meldrum, most of us. I mean, almost all of us. I would probably venture to say, Doug, all of us. have about dermal ridges and
Yeah.
footprint structure and stuff like that. What's your thoughts on that, Levi?
At this point, it would be more amazing if Sasquatch wasn't real than if it is real.
Love it.
Because to explain away the footprints and like the history is, I just can't wrap my mind around it. Part of me is like, yeah, it'd be kind of cool if Sasquatch wasn't real, because that means there's this deep-rooted conspiracy of this team of people who have been hoaxing stuff going back for hundreds of years and have not been caught today. And that's amazing. I love conspiracies, so like, sign me up. But like, that conspiracy just doesn't make any sense. It still doesn't add up, because if you look at the assumptions you have to make, they're like pretty big. You have to assume that, one, that a lot of Native Americans were wrong, that a lot of military members, like police members, hunters, that they're wrong what they're seeing. There's a mass hallucination going on, that people are lying, that people are confusing bears for Sasquatch. You'd have to assume that there's teams of people who know how to make anatomically correct ape footprints with correct dermal ridges and sweat pores in the right location, place them randomly throughout North America, and make sure that as they go north, from south to north, that they get bigger as they go north.
Well, yeah, and don't forget, you also have to fool trained scientists that have been looking at footprints their entire lives. Plus you have to add all that too. So like you say, if it's not real and somebody's that ambitious, I'd like to meet them, because they're about the smartest around.
Well, something else is that there have been multiple people. Meldrum talks about Jimmy Chilcutt, but there's also other ones that Dr. Krantz talks about, who are like FBI who are experts in looking at dermal ridges, or they're fingerprint experts. Their testimony would put people behind bars, and they vouch for the authenticity of these footprints. So if these footprints aren't real, well, then I would say we would have to push for all the people they put behind bars to be released, because clearly their judgment isn't good. So if it's good enough to put people behind bars, I'm going to say that it's probably good enough to vouch for the authenticity of these footprints. I don't think that's too big.
Yeah. One of my favorite arguments, Levi, is to mention that if this is just spurious information, people are misidentifying, why do all the sightings happen near woods, water, and hills? There's always those elements present. And so if you take like a map of North Dakota where there's a few sightings, they're going to be along a river. They're not going to be, in the middle of some field. They're always going to be undercover. It's so consistent. It's just beyond consistent. Beyond. It's a geographic problem.
It's the repeatability that the scientific process asks for. Like, everything you would expect is consistent throughout the sightings.
Yes.
Like, I forgot which specialist was on, but they said, like, if you overlap every spot gets over 20 plus inches of precipitation each year, and the reported Sasquatch sightings, they like overlap like perfectly.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of like the fauna that's found in the same place. I believe it's like rhododendrons, which they're pretty consistent. I know this was on MonsterQuest, I believe, in a Canadian episode, but they were talking about how the sightings follow the berries as the berries become ripe.
Yeah.
And like, sure, people can confuse them for bears. I'm sure that happens. But the other thing could happen too, because I know people I've talked to have seen them, and when I've read reports or like listened to people talk on finding Bigfoot, one of the consistent things that's reported in sightings was like, I thought it was a bear at first, but the more I stared at it, I know it wasn't. Like,
right. Yeah, they're not seeing the high ears, the slope shoulders, the white muzzle. They're seeing something with broad shoulders. There's no ears on top, ears on the side. I've had a number, because I've done a lot of bear research, I've had a number of people that have seen Bigfoot that have contacted me not to report a Bigfoot, but just to find out if bears cannot walk upright. So they'll say, oh, okay, I saw this bear walking out of an apple orchard, and then it walked down the railroad tracks. Upright? And I'll confirm, yeah, upright. Well, did it have wide shoulders or narrow shoulders? Really wide, like, oh my God, it's almost as wide as my car. Well, and then I'll, keep asking them questions, and they'll get mad at me. Because they're like, no, it was a bear. But everything they told me is not a bear. And of course, bears won't normally, there's been a few cases, but a bear won't walk, for a mile down a railroad track, upright.
They don't have clavicles, so when they stand up, their shoulders slope in.
Yeah,
so
really.
They don't have
bad.
broad shoulders.
Yeah, they have very narrow shoulders. I'll bet you if there's 6,000 sightings, that probably maybe 5 are misidentified bears where they didn't get to see the entire animal. Just a glimpse of fur. There's probably more misidentifications with tree roots and tree stumps than there are bears.
And it's funny I don't know about you guys, but like the more research I do, the more I feel there are a lot more sightings than what are reported. Because I know, for example, when I wrote my first book, it came out, my hairdresser, she was talking to me and she's like, Levi, this story got me thinking. One day, my ex-husband drove in to work and it was early in the morning, and he came home and he was freaked out because he said he saw something standing alongside the road, and she's like, I thought maybe he just saw a bear. And she's like, he was freaked out for weeks. She's like, after reading this, I know that there's other sightings in this area. I know that was a Bigfoot. And it just made me think, like, how many other people in this area? Because I know of maybe one report in my area, and I've looked into like 10 other like legitimate encounters, and only one of them has ever been reported, and it's not posted on anything. So I just wonder how many other reports there are, like actual encounters there are, but people are just too afraid of the ridicule, which rightfully so. Like, if I saw one, I wouldn't be like, hey guys, I saw one. I would be like, no, I've never saw one. No, you're crazy.
How many, what percentage do you think, Levi, have been reported officially?
So Matt Moneymaker said that he's got like 60,000 reports on the BFRO. And let's just assume that 30% of those are legitimate. So that let's just do a third. So let's say that 20,000 are legitimate, and that 40,000 are fake. That people just went on and from finding Bigfoot and just trying to pull a prank. Because not all of them are posted, obviously. But let's say there's 20,000 reported. I would say there's probably at least 5, maybe 10 times as many more sightings that have happened. Because I know of people who've had multiple encounters, not just like one encounter. And I've only talked to a select few people. I just happen to be fortunate enough to have some friends who've had encounters, and once they know like I'm like serious about the subject, they're like, yo, I gotta tell you the story. So I know a random person in Walmart's not gonna come up and tell me that story. So, and just how many people have actually had encounters, the more I talk to people or to other investigators in my area, the more like I realize like this is a pretty common phenomenon. It's not as rare as what I thought it used to be.
Yeah. Alex, is there a way to crank up Levi's volume a tiny bit?
I just did.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, so we should be good there.
Thank you, Audio Flats. Yeah. Yeah, it looks like you're using a really interesting mic. I've never seen a mic like that. It's cool.
It fits well, and it's kind of small, but
it's cool. Anyhow,
it's probably Yeti Snowball, right?
It's
the mic?
blue. It's blue. It's a Snowball Ice, so I don't know if there's Yeti on there.
Yeah.
If there was a Yeti one, I should have got it.
So what do you think about structures, tree structures, nests, stuff like that people are finding in the woods?
I'm not going to say I'm 100% convinced, because I think that can be dangerous if you're overly confident in something, but I will say that I am 95% positive that these are legitimate things. In my area, I don't really find stick structures. What I find is tree arches. This is kind of a cool story, because I just I just found some tree arches a couple weeks ago, but on this one property, there's a south-facing hill, and during the summer, I thought I was hearing wood knocks during the day. And at first, I wrote it off because the guy whose property it is, he's a very particular man, and I thought he was throwing rocks at when he was mowing at his shed, which is unusual. It's not something he would do. So I'm like, okay, like this must not be anything. But then when I came back to that spot, because my trimmer ran out of line, then it ran out of gas, so I had to come back a couple times. He was like 100 yards away from his shed, so he wouldn't have been throwing rocks at his shed. And I was hearing wood knocks, and that was last summer. I'm like, this is unusual. I tried to be skeptical. I don't like to be like, oh, that's a Bigfoot there. I tried to be like, what could that be? Could that possibly be like a squirrel making a sound or like rocks hitting the shed? But there was really no explanation for it. And fast forward to earlier this month, I was walking a hill that's north facing in the same valley, about 300 yards away from that. And I got there and there was a ton of trees that were bent over. These trees, some of them were like 10 feet, like the arch was like 10 feet, 12 feet high, like something that no human would do. And this is on private property. I went up in that area working in August or September, and those tree arches weren't there. So this is like something that's relatively fresh, and nobody has been on that property because I have to watch that property. I'm house sitting for that guy, and nobody has been out there except for me. So it was quite interesting. So I am one that buys into that. There's other locations I've gone where I've walked into like woods and found like tree arches, and sometimes like I've hunted a lot. I've like spent a lot of time in the woods. So like when you spend a lot of time in the woods, you kind of develop your sixth sense. And there'll be times where I'm like by myself in these woods and I'll be like near these tree arches and it'll feel like eyes are on me. And I know that sounds like weird, but like you understand the feeling if you've been in that position, and it's weird. Like in these areas where there's tree arches, it always feels like there's eyes on me. But when you walk away from those areas, you're fine. And I've gone up in those areas at different times of the year and not had that feeling. So, I mean, that tells me that it's not just like me getting spooked by the area. That tells me that there's something in the area. I mean, I've been like stalked by a big cat in the woods before. I think it was a big lynx. But like I knew immediately. I was talking to my friend. I'm like, yo, something's stalking us. And like 5 minutes later, we heard a cat scream. Another time I was like walking in the woods and I just got this feeling like eyes were on me, and I looked toward the direction where the eyes were on me, and there was a coyote staring at me. So it's like, it just, I can't really explain it, but it is something that has like developed in me over time. And I'm sure it's happened to you guys as well, where it just feels like something's like watching you. And like, so I don't just write off those experiences because like it's not nothing, even though it might not be what we think it is. I think they definitely need, we definitely need to be a little bit, I kind of lost my train of thought, but we need to be skeptical of these, but we definitely need to look into them more because there is something there.
Right.
I think anyway.
Yeah. It'll be really interesting if somebody we could get a number of reports of these things building these. I will say that I know of a sighting very personal, close to me, because it was myself who saw what looked like a Bigfoot walk out of a structure along a freeway on Highway 94 in Wisconsin. And that was seen by two people. All black, of course, you don't get a, pardon?
Oh, you said Highway 94, like, is that up by
freeway?
Like, Minneapolis?
Right. If you take Minneapolis and drive to like the Wisconsin Dells, easy to find on a map, about maybe 20 miles west of Wisconsin Dells, during deer hunting season, I believe it was in the fall, we saw something upright, extremely black, walk out of a stick structure. And there were dead deer all along the freeway. They had been hit by semi-trucks. And it didn't take a big stretch to go, if I was an animal and I ate deer, that would be a really good source. I would set up a temporary blind and live here and have a great source of protein before winter.
Mm-hmm.
It just made sense. And we both saw it clear as day. I mean, we're in the right lane heading east, and this stick structure was just behind the barbed wire fence. and here it just walked right out of it.
Oh, that's funny because I don't live that far from there.
So there was one example, and it happens to be me because I believe it because I saw it, of something that could be a Bigfoot walking out of a tree structure, using it as a blind or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a complex structure. I mean, you could see this thing was all woven together.
Yeah. Like it took its time to make this
So
blind.
there's a tip for you, Levi. Maybe it would pay to drive that length of freeway just looking for structures. And then, of course, you got to figure out how you're going to get, because you can't pull over on a freeway, how you're going to get back there to get into the forest to examine the structure.
Well, funny enough, my favorite place to go hunting Bigfoot is on that freeway, about maybe 30 miles from where you had your sighting, 20, 30 miles. So not that far away.
Have you ever noticed how many dead deer are because they've been hit by semi-trucks? There's so much semi-traffic on that road, and there's a dead deer every mile sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's so many, like, especially in my area, because I live a little bit more like south of where this would have happened to you. There's CWD, it's chronic wasting disease. So their deer are so overpopulated that there's a disease that's kind of affecting them, and it's pretty bad. And that just kind of, normally you have diseases going through when you have like an overabundance of a species. Like that's part of the problem that we have with deer. And that also, like, there's so many dead deer alongside the road at like all times of the year.
Oh yeah.
But wouldn't it make sense to just utilize that whole stretch of 90? I know it's thick forest there because I check Google Maps. It's just, you agree with me? It's some thick forest.
Well, like I said, my favorite spot to go is along 94 and not that far away from where you're talking about.
See, I didn't know that. So that's a kind of interesting that we're.
Yeah, for the listeners, this is the first time I've ever talked to Doug. So that's kind of, kind of cool.
Yeah.
So Levi, when you dive into the lore of Bigfoot, what part of the history is it? The Native American history that gets you? I mean, what convinces you in history so much that how old this could possibly be and how long we've been interacting with Bigfoot as a species?
Well, I would say one, just Native American history in general, just because they all detail almost the exact same thing, especially in the Pacific Northwest, where they would have been furthest away from news of like the apes in Africa. So that would have come to them last. And just the consistency with like the ape behaviors. Like if you look at Sasquatch reports from 1850 till 2022, they're detailing the exact same things. And they're detailing some of these behaviors before it was ever known that apes do these things, like throwing rocks, whistling, producing the odor. Like gorillas have the endorsing glands where they produce the odor to intimidate other animals. Like this was all reported. I mean, that specifically was reported in 986 when Leif Erikson came over. So like, there's just so much stuff that points to that it's like all of it taken together. Like it just kind of it's kind of like a red pill moment where it's like, whoa, there's something here. Like you take the red pill and your eyes are open. It's like, yeah, like this can't be nothing because of the consistency.
Well, also think of all the tribes that never even met each other that are talking about eerily the same thing, in eerie detail.
Exactly. And all the names. I mean, how many names? I think Kathy Machovec Strain once told me how many names. I can't remember the exact number, but it's pretty mind-blowing for this creature.
Well, and that's kind of the importance of like the Patterson Gimlin film is that it made the name Bigfoot known, because before that there wasn't like one name for these creatures. That's why you see like a lot of like wild man sightings or like hairy Indians from a couple hundred years ago. But they also talk about like the hillbilly beast, the grass man, the skunk ape, the bog monster, because there wasn't a name for this. Which is, we lose some sightings because there wasn't like one distinct way to categorize these. Because once they had like names for bears, they could just be like, oh yeah, there's a bear. And that's why their bears are named in Florida, same name in Florida as they are in like Washington, because it's a bear. But that didn't happen until the Patterson Gimlin film. And it's like you said, like just because the names are different, like these tribes never had any contact, but they're naming like the exact same thing. That definitely like that's definitely an area of interest. Now that doesn't like prove the existence, but like the way some scientists just ignore it's just mind blowing.
When you dive into the lore of Bigfoot and you really get into it with the Native American, were the Native Americans fearing Bigfoot, or were they living in harmony with Bigfoot?
I guess it really depends on different cultures. Like different cultures have like different stories about Sasquatch. Some cultures will say like this was just a peaceful creature that lives in the mountains by itself. Other ones will say like you need to be careful, don't wander into the woods by yourself, otherwise they will kidnap you. So it all depends. I don't know. I haven't looked enough into like how many different tribes like view it. So maybe that's an area of interest. But go ahead.
Yeah, because it'd be kind of interesting to understand their interactions with Bigfoot, whether it was positive or negative or indifferent, or whether they, were having a very symbiotic relationship with Bigfoot.
Yeah, because I mean, there's other animals that we have like respectful relationships with. So is it too far off to think that we could have that with something else, or like they could have that with something else? And
sure.
Yeah. Do you know any good historical? There's a story. Everybody's talking about the Daniel Boone story and stuff. Do you want to relay any of those? Some of the earlier historical accounts.
I don't know of any off the top of my head that I can remember exactly. There's obviously like Teddy Roosevelt one, which I think most of us know. Yeah, I guess there isn't like one specific like historical account that I think of like, oh yeah, that's 100% it. It's just like kind of like all of them like taken in together definitely paints a really clear picture.
What is interesting, I even remember reading a story when I was doing an episode of MonsterQuest of Champlain. The guy that discovered Lake Champlain, that even he had a sighting or a number of sightings. Really interesting.
Well, it reminds me, I forgot which book it was. I think it was Legend Meets Science, when some scientist was asking the Native American, like, hey, what do you think of Bigfoot? And he just started laughing. He's like, you guys are finally onto this? Like, you're just now coming to this? Like, this is common knowledge for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Do you find it hard to resist? Let's say you're at a party or with a bunch of just people you just met. Do you find it that you get on the topic because you're so passionate about it? With a bunch of strangers.
It depends. Like if there's like hot women around, I try to avoid it.
So the Levi rule is if there's hot women.
Come on, man. I get you there.
Levi, how do you know that? How do you know that wouldn't be the ticket?
Oh boy.
I mean, it's worked before, so I guess I could try it again. It's just I try not to do it because like everybody cares more about their interest than other people's interests. So I try to like go by the Dale Carnegie rule, like to talk about other people more than talk about me.
Okay. Well, talking about Bigfoot isn't talking about you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like my thing though. So like, but there's times when
so here's the Doug rule, not the Levi rule, the Doug rule. I want you next time you're with a bunch of hot women, start talking about Bigfoot. You'll have a crowd gathered around you.
Yeah.
Try it, Levi.
If it works, it works.
Yeah, just give it one try and let me know how it worked.
So what you're saying, Doug, is he should be using Bigfoot to pick up chicks.
No, I didn't say that. And I don't even know me. For all I know, Levi's married, but I should watch what I'm saying.
Assuming he's not currently married.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying to pick up. I'm just saying it can be a really fascinating topic at a party.
An icebreaker.
icebreaker, huge.
Yeah.
Literally, where everybody's trying to learn. It's a great topic because it shocks people. I'll bring up the topic, Levi, to people that are, sales guy. Then I'm buying something at a store, and we'll end up on the topic, and I'll say, yeah, there was a sighting, right behind the store here about 4 blocks. And they'll be like, what? And you get on the topic, and next thing you know, they're all asking you a million questions. So there you go.
Well, what's funny is whenever like my friends are on like a first date, I'm the person they talk about. Whenever there's like that awkward pause, they'll be like, so my friend hunts Bigfoot.
Yeah, I got this friend of mine that hunts the Bigfoot.
Oh, I see. So you're the punching bag.
Well, my one friend puts it really elegantly. He's like, my best friend hunts Bigfoot, and he can out-argue you on the subject. Like,
Oh, there you go.
got a shooter in my corner.
Sure.
Well,
Sure.
you have the book to prove it. Alex, can you put his book up again on the screen
Yeah, sure.
so people can see the title and read the log lines and the description?
Well, I guess
It's
you got
just-
to ask, Doug, what exactly is the Sasquatch Paradox?
Yeah, there you go. There's a great question, Levi. What is the paradox?
What is it?
The Sasquatch Paradox is just the idea that Sasquatch doesn't get talked about, but everything else does. Like I talked about how like Charles Darwin presented the theory of evolution, like they fought over it. They had talked about it. Like for new theories to be accepted, they need to be discussed. And the paradox occurs because Sasquatch doesn't get discussed. Like there's flat Earth is discussed. There are scientists who will go on like Twitter and go on a rant about how the Earth isn't flat. They feel strong enough about that they need to put time into it. So why don't they do the same when it comes to like Sasquatch, which clearly has like a much stronger case to be legitimate? Like the paradox occurs when the scientific community, which is supposedly, we are led to believe, this open-minded community that will keep themselves open to any idea, won't even put any time, effort into this subject at all. And for people, if you want to know why Sasquatch hasn't been found, well, it's because the scientific community isn't putting any time into it. They're not putting any money into it.
And maybe Bigfoot, Sasquatch doesn't want to be found. Maybe it's not a matter of we can't find it. Maybe it doesn't want to be found.
Yeah, elusive animals have survived because they are elusive, because they avoid humans. So they don't want to be found because they like to live. They want to do what they need to do to survive.
I mean, maybe they're intelligent enough to have an understanding of what mankind has done to other animals before them and the forests around them. Maybe there's some thought of self-preservation that they just don't want to be next.
That could be true, but at the same time, I wonder why then we have so many stories of them like coming close to campsites.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are a lot of encounters like around campsites. Like that's something that interests me is like they come into humans. It's kind of like Siberian tigers. Their habitats are like 1,000 square miles, and they will know when a human's in their area. They will go and investigate it, and then they'll leave. And it's just weird why they would want to do that. You would assume they'd want to stay away. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it's really hard to make inferences about an animal.
Two things about this animal, and I'll use that because I don't have a better word, because I think they're more intelligent animal. I think they're us. I think they're more closely related to us than we realize. I think they're very intelligent. They've mastered how to avoid not only humans, but humans' technology. I mean, think of the intelligence of that. And so right there, I mean, they want to come in to study us, but they also know how to avoid us at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they come to look at us under their terms.
We're like under their microscope.
Levi, when you're in your tent is when they visit you. They don't visit you generally. No,
there's so many encounters. I feel like that.
Yeah, there are encounters where they'll stay behind the firelight and whatnot and do things, but generally they're pretty sneaky. I mean, they generally don't want to be busted or shot. But the road situations are real interesting because one of the sightings I had, it was just standing at the side of the road, waving its arms back and forth like it was drying off. And I think it was, because it was really windy that day and really hot. And there was a stream right there. But yet it seemed like it just didn't give a damn whether these cars, headlights were hitting it. But it had its back also turned to the traffic, which I found really interesting. And it was facing away from the headlights.
Well, I was reading in a book about how moths flying into flames makes sense because of how they perceive light. Mm-hmm. They readjust the way they fly based on the position of the moon and the other stars. So they fly into the fire because of their repositioning themselves. And we take for granted the idea of artificial light. We're so used to it, but that's a foreign concept to animals. So the idea of that artificial light and an environment does create those unique opportunities, and that's why I have a dash cam in my car for that very thing if that were to happen to me.
Yeah, good man, because if I would have had a dash cam in my car, I would probably have some really good footage by now. It's just let's put it this way, it's hard. Because I always think, well, if I had a dash cam, I probably wouldn't have seen it. You just at some point, you just get kind of this kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't attitude. But you're young. You need a dash cam in your car, Levi. And you need to make sure it's running because, and maybe it's always going to be a sighting that catches you off guard, totally off guard.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to happen when you're looking. It's going to be that one moment you're off guard and you're just driving over to your parents' house, and there it is. What in the heck?
Yeah, that's true. Things are often found when we're not looking for them.
I mean, I try to mentally prepare myself, but it's almost useless to mentally prepare yourself because you can't mentally prepare yourself for something of that magnitude.
All right, Levi. You're there.
Do you think they're dangerous, Levi, from what you've read and heard and feel?
That was
with your
exactly
gut?
where I was going to go. I was going to say, Levi, what would you do if you encountered one in the woods? Had that night gone the other way and they came out of the bushes,
I would have been dead. I wouldn't have had a chance. We like to think we're fast, but we're not compared to the animals. I always carry a gun with me. I carry a gun with me because there's other wild animals in the woods. There's also potentially dangerous humans in the woods, even though in my area that's not that likely. I still would rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Mm-hmm. It's funny. There's a lot of encounters where they tend to get aggressive around guns. So I don't know if guns are the best thing, but also if you needed to defend yourself, and one was attacking you, I would definitely not pull it out, not pull it out if I was getting charged. So it's kind of like you said, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. What do you do in that situation? I do think they're dangerous because they're wild animals. Every wild animal is dangerous. Even a deer can be dangerous. Deer kill people every year. So something like that, and bears are dangerous. So I think that's where it comes into the respect. As long as you respect the animal and don't try to do anything to get yourself hurt, then you should be fine. But also, there's times when bears will just attack humans. There's times when mountain lions will just attack humans. So, I would say, yeah, they're dangerous, but I don't know how dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How much do you want to see one up close in person, and how much are you terrified of the thought?
So, for me, right now, it's I want to see one so bad. But then when I'm in the woods with my therm and I'm walking around, nah, I don't really want to see one right
now. Just not tonight. I want to see one, just not tonight. Yeah.
I want to see one crossing a road in front of me. Yeah, that's fine. I don't want these stories of them coming in growling, stomping their feet outside the campsite. No, I don't want
and you
that.
prefer it from afar. I mean, if you do see one, you'd like it, maybe 200-300 yards away. Something where there's a little bit of safety between you. You have distance between you and it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the stories where you hear the people who walked in the woods by themselves, and then they said they were getting stalked on their way out, and like they said they were like running out, they could see something following behind them. Like those are the stories where it's like, man, I'm stupid for going out and doing this. So you try to avoid thinking of those stories when you're in the woods.
So
well,
you go,
I can offer some advice. Do not read the Missing 411 books.
yeah.
Do not.
Yeah.
It'll just totally
Don't
ruin
watch the movie and don't read the
your
book.
love.
Stay away from David Paulides at all costs.
Yeah, at all costs. You know, and he's never said, of course, it's Bigfoot. We don't, you know, but it is interesting. Definitely don't recommend you or anybody do research alone. You know.
No, but if you're gonna go alone, at least tell people at events where you're going. Say, hey, I'm going out. You know, just normal etiquette. I mean, that's for hunting or anything when you're out and about like that. You know.
Yeah, it's true.
But you have gone out by yourself.
A few times in the dark. Lots of times when I go out by myself, it's like during the day, and I'm just in like a generic area. Like the place that I go that's closest to me is like it's a reserve. Like I don't even know if it's considered state forest. It's just like the Kickapoo Valley Reserve. So like there's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of people there. So I'm not too worried. But I have gone a few times out at night by myself, and it's just like, man, that's too much. I can't do it.
Yeah. Well,
I feel like a pussy, but like, man, it's scary.
The thing is, the more you believe, the more you're smart. You don't want to go out alone.
I challenge anyone who's skeptical to go out with a Bigfoot researcher at night.
Yeah.
It's easy to be skeptical as an armchair quarterback, but when you're actually out in the woods in the middle of the night by yourself or with another person, it's a lot harder to be skeptical.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm reading some of these comments, and a lot of them, you know, have been alone. Like Western New York Bigfoot says, you know, I was alone and I was terrified. So you're not alone. We all get that way. I've been in the woods in total darkness, no headlights on or anything, to be, you know, and sitting there and trying to communicate with Bigfoot. And also in the back of my head going, okay, what the hell am I going to do if he decides to come charging out of the bushes? You know, there's always that little bit of fear. And I think that's also healthy because that keeps you safe also. That fear is there to keep you safe.
So I'm against doing calls, actually. And the reason is because from my experience hunting is you only do calls during a select time, and that's when the animal's breeding, because they're kind of dumb. They want to mate, so they turn their senses down a little bit. So they come in so that they can get a chance to mate. And I would just say we don't know enough about that Sasquatch to do calls, because calls only work during mating season. I've done calls to bucks outside of mating season, and big bucks would like literally run away from my stand because it wasn't time. So that's why I avoid it, because sometimes they can react differently than what we expect. And also, like, if you are doing a mating call and they run in, like, and they see you, like, that's a good way. I guess.
What's wrong, Levi? You're not a bad-looking guy. Maybe they'll show up and go, well, you know, I'm here and you're here.
I'll take one for the team. I'll get all the DNA evidence we need.
Yeah, there you go. What about wood knocking? What are your thoughts?
I will do it if I think there's something in the area that's potential. So if something's like, let's say I think something's throwing like rocks at me, I'll maybe do a knock to try to see if like there's a change. Because if like, let's say like if it's just like the wind maybe knocking nuts down, then nothing else will happen. But if you like do a knock, sometimes I hear like you'll get like a couple of rocks thrown consecutively, or a couple of nuts thrown consecutively. So I just kind of do them like kind of intermittently, so not very often, but like I feel like they are a little bit more effective because they're also not as loud, so you're not like calling way off. Because I can make a call and someone on the other hill could be like, oh man, I just heard a Bigfoot, when it was just me. But like I've got a therm, so like if anything's like knocking in my direction, like I'm gonna know if it's another person or not.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
So Ilse asks whether you found anything on the highway or near, 94. Have you found footprints? Have you found any evidence other than the audio and the interactions that you've had?
Not exactly on 94. I don't, because of where I live, I don't drive in between like Wisconsin Dells and Toma, because where I live to get onto 94, I go to Toma.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're out of time.
Yeah, I hate to cut that off right there. Author of Sasquatch Paradox, a scientific defiance to the recognition of relic hominids is the book. Check it out. Hanger One Publishing is the publisher. Check it all out. I want to thank you guys all for listening in, hanging out with us. Doug, thank you a ton. Levi, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, Levi,
Alex,
thank
you so much
Thanks
for producing
again.
the show again. Till next time, guys, take care of each other and love each other. Thanks again for coming on board.